A couple of years ago, similarly to The Boys, we talked about the first season of House of the Dragon, which took everybody and took the world by storm. It was a huge smash success for HBO Max when it premiered, and I think a lot of people were just yearning for more Game of Thrones. They just wanted to see more of these stories, and of course, this is a prequel that's set nearly 200 years before Daenerys Targaryen, and so it's really the height of the Targaryen family. And so I definitely would encourage people to sort of re-engage with season 1 if you can, because it has been a couple of years, and also if you want to talk, go back and revisit some of our reviews. But after a 2-year wait, after a pretty long wait to get back to this world and get back to these characters, we now have the first episode of what will be an 8-episode season. It's not going to be 10 episodes like season 1. It's going to be a reduced episode count for this season, but I'm sure it will be as great as season 1 was. But what were your overall big picture thoughts about what we saw at the season premiere? Before we get into spoilers, how did you feel about the return of House of the Dragon to HBO?
I liked it. I think it did what it needed to do as an opening to the season. Some things transpire in the episode that to me set up the whole rest of the season. I was like, oh, that makes sense. We deal with a lot of the things we need to deal with from that season premiere. From that season's finale at the end of season 1. And they give us more cool ass cinematography. They show us where all of our characters are for the most part. I think overall, I would like to see a little bit more from the green side. I think that is the side that is getting shortchanged a little bit in this whole thing. But overall, man, I'm still having a good time, and I think again, I think it does exactly what it needed to do coming off that season finale, and for episode 1 of a new season. I'm pretty happy with where this episode landed, and in fact, it ended up being a wild episode by the end of it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy right now.
I'm locked in. I am locked in with House of the Dragon. I'm so glad to be back in Westeros, and so glad to be back with these characters in this world. It was truly a really impressive first season. Not perfect, definitely has some flaws to it, but this first episode of season 2 for me, it just gets right into it. We dive right back into where things left off, pretty much picking up right after the events of season 1. And I think that worked in its favor so much because season 1 had to do a lot and had to achieve a lot that's almost insurmountable. I mean, we were telling a story in season 1 that spanned decades. There were significant time jumps. And so I think the balance of season 1 wasn't always the greatest in terms of who we spent time with and some of the, the character switches and focal points that we sort of, had to balance throughout the course of that season. And also just like the lack of time we spent with some of these people because they might have gotten introduced in like episode 8 or episode 9. Like it just had to get through a lot in a very little amount of time. But now that we're here and we're really in the throes of what this war is going to be, I just really enjoyed the pacing of this episode. I think it's already significantly better than what we saw in the last season. And this season in particular also is going to contain so many shocking things. And it's starting off here already with this first episode, but this season is going to have a lot of really shocking stuff. It's going to get absolutely chaotic and unbelievable and just like, what the fuck? This is exactly what you want from Game of Thrones. Just like really shocking events after event after event. And so the way that they sort of came out swinging with this first episode, presenting us with just truly a horrific sight at the end of it, it's setting the tone. And I think that they set it appropriately, and it really just automatically brings you back to where everything is and just like how serious this conflict is that's developing between the Greens and the Blacks, and just like how much of it is going to cost everybody involved. And I just love what they did here. So really enjoyed the season 2 premiere. But folks, if you've not seen the premiere of House of the Dragon season 2, this is your spoiler warning. We're going to talk about some of the details of this episode. So definitely go check that out and come back and finish out the rest of our conversation. Gonna start differently here. Let's just go to the shit. Like, let's just get right to it. The ending of this episode, which is adapting, again, one of the more shocking elements of this story, blood and cheese, that whole incident that takes place at the end of this episode. A lot of people suspected that this might have been maybe the end of season 1. And I think that this could have probably been an appropriate end to season 1, but it might even be more effective as the opening to season 2 to just remind us, like, wow, this is really bad. This is really bad. But this whole blood and cheese thing, it's pretty much the culmination of this blood feud between these two families. Rhaenyra is reeling from the death of her son, which we saw at the end of season 1. And she comes back to Dragonstone and she tells Daemon, I want Aegon Targaryen. That's all she says. Those are literally the only lines that we hear from Emma Darcy in this episode. They're the most profound lines that somebody can utilize. And Damon, in all of his nefarious schemes, takes that and he fucking runs with it, and basically
Lord
hires two
Jesus.
assassins. They go into the Red Keep at King's Landing, and they find the two young children of Aegon Targaryen, the king, of course, now, and his wife Helena. And they're looking for the son because they can't find Aemon, the one who's actually responsible for the
Mm-hmm.
death of Rhaenyra's son in the last episode. But they basically kidnap Helena. They ask which one is the son. It feels like she might be misdirecting them, but in actuality, she's telling the truth. And she gives up her son and she
Mm-hmm.
takes her daughter and she runs out. And this episode ends with just, I mean, really shocking sound design because we don't see anything. It's the
We
sounds
don't.
of what you hear that are so unsettling and so disgusting to hear, but it's just truly shocking television. So, the shit is just even worse than, I mean, what we could have even imagined at the end of season one. Is this one of the more shocking incidents out of like all of Game of Thrones lore that we've seen, like including the original series? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where does this rank for you in terms of just like, oh my god, this is really deplorable stuff that we're seeing unfold in the story.
Yeah. What's crazy is I don't know if shocking is the word. It might be one of the most one of the more, maybe the more disgusting ones. Maybe one of the ones that make your shakes you to the core a little bit more. It shook me a little bit more, maybe. I should say. Then I am surprised of to what happens, because when it all goes down, it's just like you said, the sound design, the idea, the concept of it. They are literally like killing, murdering a child. It just made me go, oh my god, like I can't believe this is happening in kind of in that sort of way. Yeah, maybe shocking isn't it, but maybe the way it made me feel, it is pretty up there. Because you do wince, you do. I like looked away and looked at the screen and looked away and looked at the screen again, and I was like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. So yeah, I would attribute it to that, because it's just such a crazy moment. Yeah, and even in that moment, again, they thought she was lying, but she was like, no, she's telling the truth. I was like, oh my god, they're really about to do this thing. I thought maybe something else might happen. Somebody could walk in. So they're like, nope, we're going through with it through and through. So yeah, it was pretty crazy to see.
No, this is shocking for me. This is brutal as fuck. Like we are just like sawing off a child's head. Like, come on,
Crazy.
this is. Let's be honest, man. This is crazy shit that I just, unless you really read the books and understood, which I didn't, I just know the broad strokes of the
Mm-hmm.
story. I was just like, whoa, wait a second here. This is not what we were supposed to be doing. This is just taking it to a whole nother level. But that, it feeds into Damon as a character because
Yeah.
it don't really matter to him. Damon is just like out for fucking blood. He wants the smoke all the time, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that I thought is, as I was watching it, I'm like, well, wait a second. There's no way Rhaenyra actually wanted this to happen. Like, she meant what she said, but only that. To think that a son for a son was truly going to result in a young, helpless, harmless baby being brutally murdered in this way, by two imbeciles, by the way, just two completely just ridiculous, incompetent guys, but also two guys who just don't give a fuck and they're going to do what they want to do. That's what they're there
Mm-hmm.
for. I mean, we see, the one who's portraying Cheese, he kicked a dog. Like he just like without
Oh
compunction,
yeah.
just like punted a dog. It was like, oh, y'all really don't give a fuck. Y'all are really like just terrible people to go and then
Mm-hmm.
do this. It's kind of just like, I think it's just the illustration of this entire show. The fact that, like, obviously Allison and Rhaenyra are the focal points. They're at the center of this. They are the conflicting two opposing forces. But so often the men in their life are responsible for all the bullshit that's actually happening. It's really the men that are fucking shit up. It's
Yep.
Damon. It's their
Amen.
sons. It's all of
Yep.
them. It's like, what are we doing? These people who are twisting and taking liberties with things that are being said and being done, and really kind of, I think, pointing and directing this whole conflict in the darkest depths of what it could possibly be. I mean, it's all crazy. And the fact that like this episode ended this way, I mean, I think that this is definitely up there for shocking incidents in all the Game of Thrones history in terms of like what
Mm-hmm.
we've seen out of the live action. Like, we're talking in the conversation of Red Wedding, we're talking in the conversation of when fucking Cersei and Jamie pushed out
Oh yeah, in episode
Yeah,
one,
into episode one, like
yeah, push brand,
push
yeah.
Bran out the way. It's like it's up there with like, yo, what is going on here? And if you weren't locked in before, I think that you see one boy die at the end of season one, and excuse me if I can't remember all these names. It's a lot of characters and a lot of names, but you see one die, and he's like young,
Mm-hmm.
but still like of age and like riding dragons and shit.
Lucerys.
It's like, okay, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's sad, that sucks. We're definitely gonna feel the wrath of that, but a young baby, it's like, okay,
Crazy.
this is taken into a completely different realm entirely. And so I think it's effective. It's really, really effective in just showcasing how much of a bloodbath all of this is going to be, because
Mm-hmm.
there ain't no coming back from this. Like we already kind of reached the point of no return. Now more than ever, there is no returning from this. There's no going back. It's only going to get darker and deeper from here on out. And so it was really really a crazy sight to see, and I think just a really, really effective way to end off the season and just kind of point us in the direction of what the themes of the show and what the season in particular are going to be as we start to edge a little bit closer to the Dance of Dragons. Um, I want to talk about the stuff in King's Landing because we kind of finally get some real time with Aegon the second, who's the new
Mm-hmm.
king of everything, and you know his young son did get murdered at the end of this episode. But before all of that, we're seeing him as a leader. We're seeing him sort of step up to the plate and try to navigate this newfound power. And unexpectedly for me, he's actually pretty funny. He's still a dick, not a
He
great
is funny.
guy, but funny. They
Mm-hmm.
do the whole elaborate introduction and they call him magnanimous, and he's like, "Really?
Magnanimous.
Magnanimous? Like what are we
Magnanimous.
doing here?" And he has several
Yeah,
moments like that. And even though he is a dick and at times incompetent and doesn't really listen, he also tries. Like, he's different.
he
I think he's
does.
different than Joffrey, from Game of Thrones, and in,
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that
Right.
he is trying, and he is like actually trying to make an effort to appeal to some of the people's wishes, the people of King's Landing, and what they want to see, and some of the
Mm-hmm.
favors that they want done just based on their own personal lives. And he's actually like trying to take a lot of that stuff in consideration while also still taking some counsel from everybody around him, of course, from the small council, obviously. So, what did you make of just
Mm-hmm.
like Aegon, sort of being in power now and just like seeing how he navigates these situations? Because we didn't get a ton of time with him at the end of season one, but now we're starting to really see the whole, I guess, the whole just realization of who he is as a king.
Yeah, Aegon is really excited to be here, because Viserys didn't give him a lot of opportunity to be there, and I think they talk about that, but he has Jaehaerys, his son, at the table with him, while they're having this important meeting with the council, and everyone's like, why the hell is Jaehaerys here? But it really is because Viserys didn't let Aegon sit at the table, so now he's trying to give Jaehaerys everything that he didn't have. So I think that's very interesting, but he's very happy to be in this position as king. He's really trying, like you said, he's actually trying, and I thought that was very interesting. He didn't have like the demented feel to him. In fact, all of the things that were, I guess, on the feel like they were doing wrong was Otto telling him they were doing it wrong. I was like, no, give that man his sheep back. And Otto's like, hell no, look, we can't give him his sheep back because we got to feed the dragons. I'm like, damn, what's going on here? So yeah, I like that he's actually trying. He is young. He's still, he's gonna do those things, but I think there is something in him that at least wants to be a good king, and I think that shows through his actions.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, which is not new, but he has, like, there's shithead people that sit next to him. It's just a lot of shitheads, a lot of people that are just not out for necessarily the best things to happen for King's Landing, but obviously everybody is sort of finding ways to not undermine him, but also still maintain their own political positioning. But ultimately we see him just dealing with this newfound power, and I think it's useful just to showcase like what kind of king he is. It's always fascinating to see the differences between kings that ascend to the throne in this universe, and to see like how they operate and maneuver all of this stuff, especially
Yeah.
because he is younger, right? And he's also like the less, I guess, the less chaotic one out of the children.
Mm-hmm.
Like Aemon, his older brother, is like really the
Man with the
the
sapphire
the,
eye.
the irresistible force in the room. Like that
Whew,
guy is just unpredictable in
that
so
dude's
many
scary.
ways. Can't wait to see him and Damon finally show down. But
Ooh wee.
Aegon is sort of a different sort of different person entirely, as it relates to his family. And so I think it was useful to kind of see all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Allison, by the way, I mean, not a ton to do here in this first episode, but we see She's still messing with Kristen Cole. They're
Still.
still doing their thing. I mean, he's just, he's finding any moment to just like go take her and just, do what they do. But
Yep.
that's a big cause of the rift between her and Rhaenyra to begin with. The fact that they both were romantically involved with him, but now
Yeah.
they're still doing their thing with each other. And Allison, she's obviously still I think trying to shape her children and still lead them as they
Mhm.
assume all of this power, but she has her own shit going on. What did you just make of what we saw out of Allison and just the fact that she's still probably not making the best decisions, and of course her being on the opposite side of Rhaenyra, this former best friend of hers, is seeing all of this unfold. She knows like shit's going down. Like we haven't even actively apologized for like all of the major terrible stuff that's happened, and we're just kind of allowing this
Mhm.
to take shape in these really monstrous ways, and nobody's really speaking to each other as well. And so she's I don't think she's necessarily doing the most that she could probably do in the situation in terms of let's have a conversation about this. Like let's try to end this before it escalates even beyond where it's already gone.
Yeah, what's so fun about watching shows like this is like if cell phones were a thing, none of this would be going down. So that break in communication is so crazy. Because like you said, the men in their life is really ruining everything. Aemon wasn't supposed to kill Lucerys. Blood and Cheese wasn't supposed to kill Jaharis or whatever that kid's name is. Like, it's just like all of these little things going down that they technically don't have any control over. That's not supposed to be happening, that they can't really talk about. Maybe they don't have time to talk about it. Or maybe the letter doesn't get there in time. Or maybe, it's just so much. And at the end of the season finale, there was like that moment where I forgot, like I think Allison had written her a letter or something that was like, it's just they should still be friends. And Otto does say something about that. He's like, oh yeah, you forget Allison and Rhaenyra, you guys used to be such good friends or something like that. And I'm just like, yeah, they used to until all of y'all niggas started coming around and ruining their friendship and their life, and so much is going weird in between. And I think that's weird for both Allison and Rhaenyra to navigate. It seems like they're both at odds with each other, but really it's the people in between that's making them be like this. But crazy, she's still messing with this dude Cole. I don't know if he remembers that he's a knight anymore. He can't be. He done fucked her like 18,000 times. You can't be a knight. There has to be another name for what he is, because you're definitely not supposed to having sex at all. Nevertheless, this much, it's insane. What's going down between those two? But yeah, man, it's crazy, and yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, also she's still living with the idea in her head that Viserys
Oh, said their name,
said
his name.
Aegon's name before he
Yeah,
passed on. Real Succession type shit where it's like, well, wait, who's supposed to
whew.
get the throne? Like, what are we doing here? So, she's still living with that thought in her head. So she still has this claim, this thought at least that they have a claim to the throne. More than
Mm-hmm.
Rhaenyra does, even though we know like yeah, it's really supposed to go to Rhaenyra's. There was also like an interesting moment with Allison, excuse me, and Larys Strong, who is this new weasel, that's maneuvering his way throughout this whole thing. They exchange like a really brief interaction with each other, but Larys finds her and he's just like, "Oh yeah, by the way, like I've already murdered like several members of my staff because I just didn't think that they were trustworthy." He just said it so casually. And it's like, what the fuck, bro? What? Like, but he
He's
also,
crazy.
he makes the implication that Aegon, the king, should ultimately ditch Otto as being the hand, and he should instead be named the hand instead, and be
Mm-hmm.
sitting beside Aegon and giving him counsel. But this guy is clearly like toxic as fuck. He also had the sexual shit going on with Allison last season that was just
Oh
really,
yeah,
really disturbing. So
he loved feet.
he's the new weasel of this show, very much like a mixture of Littlefinger and a mixture of Varys from Game of Thrones, but I think even
Mm-hmm.
probably more despicable than the pair of those two combined. I actually like Varys, and by the end of it, Varys was just like
That's
he was
true.
kind of
I did like Bears by the
yeah, he
end.
was kind of
Mm-hmm.
disillusioned by everything. He just wanted to protect the throne and protect Westeros, but it all got away from him. But what did you make of just Larys? Just again, sort of maneuvering his way, using the leverage that he has against Allison, and just trying to sow those seeds so that he can ultimately obtain power as the hand.
Yeah, he is so slimy. But it's interesting to see, the ways in which somebody can be smart enough to manipulate people to get what they want and potentially climb to the ranks. Especially you can see it kind of in not Aemon, but Aegon. You can kind of see an Aegon every time Otto comes over. He's like, "Oh Lord, here he comes again," and that's going to play into maybe his way and becoming the hand later, maybe because maybe Aemon will be like, you know what, I don't want you as my hand anymore. Let's get this guy over here. Let's see what he can do. So yeah, I think everything he does is just so smart. But man, what a slimy dude, man, killing people and just the way he moves is it's so crazy to watch because it almost feels more it almost feels more in our face than Littlefinger felt, than Viserys felt, than Varys felt, than a lot of those other people felt. So yeah, it's interesting to see.
Let's shift to the beginning of the episode, which surprised me because it actually opens up in Winterfell, which is not a place we have been to yet in this show, really. And the creators of the show, I think Alan Taylor, who's a producer, they talked about wanting to just kind of go back to Winterfell because it symbolizes simplicity in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really seen Winterfell since the original Game of Thrones series, but the whole opening is a conversation between Cregan Stark, a long ancestor of the House of Stark, and he promises Jacaerys that they're going to support Rhaenyra in this war and give them thousands of troops, essentially. But I thought it was just interesting to kind of kick off the season in this way. It was a bit unexpected. Obviously, shortly thereafter, we pick up right after really the events of season 1, and we find Rhaenyra, reeling from the death of her son and ultimately looking for the body. But how did it make you feel to see Winterfell again in this context? Because it kind of threw me off. I was like, wait a second, like, are we still in the present, sort of timeline? Have we done a flash forward or a flashback? It took me a couple of minutes to realize like where exactly we were in the timeline, but I thought it was an interesting choice to make at the top of the season.
Yeah, I like the choice because I'm so interested in the world now of of the Song of Fire and Ice and Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. When we say names like Baratheon and Lannister, and all these names get thrown around. There's always a little voice in my head like, "Huh, what are the Starks up to, or what is Winterfell up to? Like, what's going on over there?" And so it's good to actually see it on screen. So it was very welcome. I'm like, oh shoot, there they go, holding down that wall, and then literally Cregan Stark talks about the wall. So I just thought it was cool, because again, in the 200 years from now, the Starks will still be the masters of Winterfell, and so again, it's just cool to see kind of that lineage and where that family line exists at this current time period.
And we had to impart Jacaerys with a warning. Winter is coming. Did you know that? Did you know that winter is coming? It's
Hey,
it's it's on the way.
it's on the
It's right around the corner.
winter.
Like 200 years, it's gonna be here. And shit's gonna hit the fucking fan. Like, get ready.
Get
We
ready.
could not leave Winterfell without that warning. And it's like, yeah, we know, bro. We
Yeah,
saw it. We
we
definitely saw it.
know.
We know it's coming. So I just love that they just throw it in there. We got to get that in there. Winter is indeed coming for everybody's ass. Very very soon here, but. To go over to Dragonstone, Team Black, I do want to, sort of focus back on Rhaenyra and give her the proper due. Although she did only speak one line in this episode, we do get to see a lot emotionally from Emma Darcy's performance
Ooh,
here. And I mean, wow, just talk about a mother in
wow.
mourning and just like what she has to do as a character and dealing with this news. They get the Raven that her son is indeed dead, and we see it all over her physically. She is just completely distraught by this information and by this news. We know more than anything. Rhaenyra loves her family, like loves deeply her family, and she's gone through so much hell. And even season 1, just witnessing like the physicality of the births that she's provided to her children, multiple times in that show, which is just like, yeah, this is motherhood. This is motherhood at its most raw form. A mother who loves her children, tries to protect them, tries to guide them and lead them. One of them ends up getting killed, and she really can't do anything about it. And she's also in a state of disbelief for a bit as well. It takes her own personal journey to go find the remains of Lucerys, in any way that she can, and she ultimately stumbles upon his I think it's his cloak and other sort of garments that have washed ashore after he was killed by the dragon at the end of season 1. So, I mean, what do you just want to say about the character of Rhaenyra and Emma Darcy's performance and just everything she kind of showcased here from an emotional standpoint?
Hey man, I think Emma Darcy coming for that Emmy, boy. She is already episode 1. I'm like, you said one line in this whole thing, but the emotional gut punch we can feel in your, like, she's coming from such a deep place right now with her character. It's very, very refreshing to see her play this character so well, man. But after having a stillbirth and then losing your son, it's not even just losing her son, it's the way she lost her son. Like, the nigga got bitten by a dragon, bro, like midair. You know what I'm saying? And up until this point, Rhaenyra has done, I think, a good job of trying to be such a poised queen. I think, and losing Viserys. I forgot to add that on top of that. Stillbirth, her son, and then Viserys, losing your father. But she's up until this point, she's tried to be such a poised queen. Like, when they're going through battle plans of trying to figure out who's on their side, she's been saying things like, we have to wait to see who's on our side to retaliate, or I don't want to do this thing yet. She is waiting until the right moment to strike, until she has to strike. But it's not until she sees that tangible evidence of her child in the piece of that dragon on that shore that really breaks her down to her core and really makes her flip. It really turns her into somebody who it's time to be about action. And that's when, again, we see her deliver that line specifically to Daemon, because she knew Daemon could get it done. But like, I want Aemon Targaryen. And so it's just like, I think she's doing a tremendous job. Rhaenyra, man, still right now my favorite character. I mean, she's kind of just killing it right now in what she's been doing. But she's another force to be reckoned with on this acting thing, man. She's doing a really good job. I can't wait to see more performances from her, because I know she's only going to go more crazy as the season goes on.
Yeah, just really phenomenal stuff here across the board from Emma Darcy, and just the weight that she has to carry on her shoulders. It's obviously a lot, and you have to really feel and empathize just with the situation, and just like how things have just escalated so quickly and so significantly in such a short amount of time, where now we are leading with rage, we are leading with revenge and retribution. That's where we're at now. That's all it is. It's no more talking on her end, at least. And as you said, she knew her uncle and her husband can get it done. And Damon, boy, he is you talk about villains and shows. Just what a just so much to Damon as a character as well.
There
Who we should
is,
quickly talk
I
about. I
agree.
mean, when he puts that cloak on, instantly just drowns himself into the evil ways that we know him to really escalate and excel at. There's that Kermit meme that flows around online after he puts that cloak
Mm-hmm.
on. A lot of Palpatine energy as well. It's like, yeah, he's on his business when that's about to happen. But yeah, what did you think about just Damon Matt Smith? Of course, I think he was such a force in season 1 too, and we saw him do so much, and already he's helping once again just kind of shape the events of everything that's going down, and ultimately goes to King's Landing, really is able to infiltrate everything that's happening there, and sort of acting on behalf of his love of his life, and doing something that
Mm-hmm.
he's willing to do. He's willing to get his hands dirty in that respect, and make this really, really, I don't know, just make this really, really hurtful and harmful thing go down in a way that is just only going to stoke the fires even more. And I think he also knows like what it's going to mean. He knows like, yeah, this is
Yeah.
it. This is really the sounding shot, because everything kind of depends on how they'll react to Lucerys dying. Like, that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing, but what's the comeback blow from that? Do you call for a truce? Do you call for peace? Or is it, as we see in the title of the episode, a son for a son? And that's what it is. What do you make of just his movements, and maybe how that's going to influence and shape the relationship between him and Rhaenyra? Because again, I just don't think that this is what she wanted exactly. Like, she wanted a certain type of
Yeah.
thing, but he did something else completely. He pretty much said like, get it done by any means necessary, and if it can't be him, then find another one. That has to come out, and that has to be something that they deal with in their relationship later in the season, right?
Yeah, but he was like, "Oh, you want me to go do what? Oh, bloodshed." He said, "All right, bet, I got you." And like you said, when you put that hood on, it becomes a whole nother person, man. This dude really is an assassin. And it's just interesting to see his motivations, because he does, of course, crave for that blood, but there is a side of him too who does want the best, for Rhaenyra and what's going on. Even she's upstairs having babies. He's like, no, we have to stay down here and do battle plans to figure out what our next move is. And he shouldn't do that for sure. But there is still a level to him that's like, I think this is the best thing to do because he does. That is the moment where he probably felt like he had the most power. He felt like he was in command. I'm sure he does want to be king. You know what I mean? And he takes any moment possible to use that. That's why I like that moment between him and Rhaenys. Rhaenys is like, I'm not riding with you anywhere. Rhaenys can combat him because he wants to be king. She's like, if you was king, I will listen to you, but not today. You ain't the king, and I know he hates that, but that's who Daemon is. Daemon wants to be king. He wants to lead. He wants to lead the charge into bloodshed to become that big warrior. You know what I mean? To in history. But yeah, it's all of this is going to come. Sooner or later when he gets back. I can't wait to see what happens. She gonna be like, y'all kill who? That's not what I asked for. It's gonna be nuts. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's gonna be great to see, man. But yeah, I love this dude as a character. He's so mischievous and so and evil in his own ways, while again sometimes serving Rhaenyra, who I think also has such a dark side. And she knows that she can use Daemon as her dark side and that she doesn't necessarily have to touch. That's what she looks directly at Daemon and was like, I want Aemon Targaryen. That's her dark. She's like, go dark side, go do the thing I can't necessarily do myself. So I love that they have that in their relationship. But man, it's about to get messy soon.
How about Masseria in this episode, who
Uh-oh.
Daemon pretty much makes this whole exchange with? She's known as the White Worm, and she's been arrested, but Daemon is able to, offer her freedom in exchange for making this whole plan go into motion anyway, because she's able to help recruit Blood and Cheese to carry out this plan. But noticeably her accent is a little bit different in this season than season one. I remember her accent wasn't all that great in season one, but this appears to be a character that, again, not knowing too much about the books, does have a bit of a different storyline here than how she is portrayed in the books. And I think she also had a bigger role in the whole brutal sort of Blood and Cheese incident. But that's not really the case here. I think in the books, she lays a lot of the blame on Daemon for ultimately carrying it out. But here, she doesn't really seem all that complicit involved in the situation. I think she's just mostly concerned. She's like, I'm trying to just get the fuck out of here. That's all I'm concerned with. I'll do whatever I need to do, but after that, you go forth and do what you need to do, and don't involve me. But there's so much there, I think that's still to be unpacked with her character, and she's obviously going to be, really important. There's some I think sympathy we can place on her, but also she is still somewhat responsible in this whole thing. So what do you foresee for her, and how did you feel about just like how they utilize her in the whole Blood and Cheese incident that took place towards the end of the episode?
Yeah, I think I like how much information she knew and how much information she had, and I guess the idea of like I thought maybe Damon was just gonna like kill her after they found out, you know what I mean, the information that she gave away. But I think his decision to keep her was for a good reason. Now maybe that I know you've been kind of moling around, I can get some shit from the other side. Maybe we can use you to infiltrate Team Green. You know what I mean? Maybe we can use you in certain ways because she is really a knowledge holder. She be knowing stuff, and she's gonna tell everything. So I man, I think she's gonna be a cool character down the line. I think she doesn't have a ton to do right now, but that was a very important plot point for her to have. In the way they changed her from the book, hey, I think there's a reason for it. I think they are gonna use her for something else. Maybe that decision is gonna change in some significant way later in the season. So yeah, I think they'll use her in some cool way later on down the line.
And I guess the last big characters we should talk about are Corlys and Rhaenys. Not a ton to do here, but definitely still moving things in motion for just like how they're gonna be involved in this conflict, and of course, just like the importance of like what drift marks mean for them and their place in this whole thing. You already talked about Rhaenys. She didn't want anything to do with Daemon, even though he thought like he could probably win her over because she's always been reluctant in this whole thing, but she's now I think she's firmly team black, but still is drawing certain lines between what she's willing to do and what she doesn't want to do. On the other hand, Corliss, he's in an interesting place, right now because he is sort of questioning, I think, his legacy of where things are going to go and how Driftmark is going to shape out in this whole thing. Because
Mhm.
his children are gone. He lost his brother. He's really kind of dependent on just like a very few people to carry out the Valerian name. But there's also the heritage question and things that come into play that we saw really take shape in the last season. That resulted in the death of his brother. But how did you feel about just sort of the movements here? They kind of speak to some of that stuff that happened with the war, how he was saved. During that war at the Stepstones, they kind of touched on that stuff too. But how do you think that this all might take shape for the rest of the season, or just general thoughts about how they utilize him in this first episode?
Yeah, Corliss is so interesting because he has technically so much power with that, with his naval, potential with his fleet that he has, and they do use him right to stop all that trade going in from King's Landing. But I still want to see more. I think into his head, to see, because right now it does seem like he also feels pretty close to fully Team Black as well. But there was that moment when he agrees to kind of be Team Black at the end of last episode, where Rhaenyra kind of looks past him and looks at Rhaenys like, Rhaenys, this is your doing, isn't it? So it kind of feels like he's operating through Rhaenys right now a little bit. And I don't really know 100% why that is, or what that's going to turn out to be. But I think, like you said, he is thinking a lot about legacy. He is thinking a lot about, shoot, maybe even Viserys, right? What Viserys wanted. Everybody knew Rhaenyra was it. You know what I'm saying? Some people probably think this is black and white. Like, it's supposed to be Rhaenyra. Team Green saying it ain't Rhaenyra. I'm on Team Black. You know what I mean? Like, I think some people really think that simply, and that could be the case for Corliss as well. But I think we'll have to see exactly, again, completely where his head is. Because I don't know, man. There's still something in me that's like, is this dude completely bought into the vision? And I don't know. I'm not completely sold yet.
Yeah, I think yeah, like after what his brother did last season, Vayman, and ultimately lost his life for it. That puts you in a pretty weird position, my guy. In this
Yeah.
whole thing, but and also like his wife Bernice, and just the consistent back and forth that they deal with. But yeah, the naval fleet is going to be super super important to this whole thing. I mean, the forces are now gathering, right? We see the stuff in Winterfell, the troops that are going to come and
Hmm.
support Rhaenyra there. Obviously, the naval fleet, which is going to be very very important because ultimately you have to figure out how to bring all these factions together to combat the royal fleet. Like everything at King's Landing is like the apex of power in this universe. They have all the
Hmm.
resources at their disposal. They even got the fucking the scorpions for the dragons,
Yeah.
which they definitely made sure to highlight in this episode. Like it's a lot of fucking scorpions all over this place that are ready to shoot down these dragons. And so yeah, I just love like the whole element of the series where we're seeing just like all of the army and strategic and militaristic stuff kind of take shape too, because that's going to just be super important as forces try to come together. But lastly, to just like round this out, there was that moment in the middle of the episode, I think, and we already talked about the blood cheese stuff, but Helena, when she was in the room with Aegon and
Hmm.
she had the servants in there, and they made a mention of the rats. She was like, there's rats around.
Mm.
I thought that was
Yeah.
just like a really really key component to this episode, because I don't know. It felt like Helena just like knew. She just knew something was off. It's like y'all are
Yeah.
worried about the dragons in the sky, but that's
Hmm.
not what you should be worried about. We need to be worried about the people around us, involved in everything that's going on here. And so I thought it was just like a really, really important decision to place that in the first episode of this season. Did you have like a similar thought or think the same thing? Or if not, how might do you see, sort of that theme possibly take shape throughout this season, that it's really the people around you within the same walls that you're living in that are ultimately dictating how things are taking shape here. It's not the dragons, it's not the weapons, it's not the armies. It's the rats beneath the walls, beneath the floorboards. It's the people that are moving, the snitches, the people that are talking, the whisperers, all that stuff. I mean, what did you just make of that moment, and just like how it influences really just kind of the direction of this entire conflict?
Yeah. Well, first, Helena is psychic. I don't know why they haven't like put her in like a room or like made her something within their council. Or the girl is psychic. She's been doing that since last season. Like she predicted what happened to Aemond in his eye. You know what I mean? Like, come on, like this girl knows what's going on. We need to listen to her. But man, that's Game of Thrones. The rats within the walls, like you said, I love I love that line because that's what it's always been about. It has been all about the people that are next to you speaking, like you said, underneath the floorboards or within the wall. It's always the people next to you who are trying to get the one up. And Helena knows that, and she senses that, and she feels that. She probably dreams about it. Again, this girl is psychic, so I thought that was a really smart line. And I think it's funny that their names are Blood and Cheese, because cheese has to do with rats. It's just crazy, man. It's just insane. So yeah, I thought it was a cool line as well.
There's definitely something going on there with her. Can't wait to see how that continues to unfold, especially because now she's going to have to, I guess, somehow confront or maybe tell Aegon, like, yeah, I kind of picked him and told them who the son was, and that's how they knew. Because like you wouldn't naturally see that with these babies sleeping, like
I
they're
mean,
clothed and everything, but like
that we're gonna kill everybody though.
they were. But what is that about? What is that really
Yeah,
about? I mean, how did she just willingly just make the choice? I mean, obviously she
yeah.
probably really had no choice because they were gonna kill anybody, as you said. And so why why
Or did
was
she
it
know
why
something?
was it exactly that's what I'm saying. Like what is there, what is there? And as you said, she typically knows more than she leads on, I think, for us to
Hmm.
know. And so can't wait to see how that all takes shape. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the season 2 premiere of the Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. If you checked out this episode, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.